Hey there, EB here, doing our weekly update on Hurricane Helena watch. Everybody should be concerned about Hurricane Helena. I was just watching the news, and it's going to be the fifth Category 4 hurricane that will cause extensive property damage in Florida up through the Panhandle. Should affect the Braves and the Mets, determining who's going to get in the playoffs for the last wild card spot over the weekend. But the real problem is with these hurricanes, what is happening is the insurance companies can no longer charge enough premiums to deal with the potential risk of these hurricanes. And while during COVID, there was a mass um, movement for people from the northern states where COVID was really affecting in New York and New Jersey and Connecticut to move south to the Sun Belt and especially to Florida because it's a haven for having certain homeowner tax breaks where you have a homestead exemption and there's no state income tax, and the exemptions are very high for judgment creditors to be able to attach the debtor's property in Florida. You, if you're a debtor, you have some really good exemptions under the Judgment Creditor Debtor Act. Now people are leaving Florida in significant amounts because they can no longer afford the homeowner's insurance, and the because of the damage that these hurricanes cause and the billions and billions of dollars that no matter how much premiums these insurance companies charge, it's never enough to be able to deal with the risk. So that's a major problem. The other bombshell news that we had come out last night and this morning is that the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, who's a former police officer who came in as a moderate Democrat talking about law and order things, just turns out to be another in a long line of shady politicians that we see um, coming out of the mayoral's office, whether it's in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Atlanta. It's turning out to be a real problem. These people get into power. They come from modest backgrounds, and then can you imagine the budget in New York City is pretty much larger than most of the countries in the world alone, let alone being part of the United States. And he's charged with significant bribery charges, and also taking unlawful campaign contributions of $125,000 of perks for travel and different gifts. $10 million of misuse of public money and taking money for campaign contributions when he ran for mayor from Turkey to get favorable treatment for Turkey to be able to have a consulate in New York City. It's a disgrace. He maintains that he's going to fight these charges, which is every right that he has as a citizen. He's innocent until proven guilty. But clearly, his authority is now questioned as an ongoing mayor. He will not resign. And he's essentially going to be a lame duck mayor with a significant amount of his term left. And Governor Kathy Hochul has the right to remove him from office, but I don't think she will. And I'm not sure we want him removed because the person that would take over is an extremely, extremely with for want of a better term, he's extremely liberal and far, 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 far left, almost socialistic, and that's not the kind of person that we want to govern New York City, which thrives on business. So that's a real disappointment. Locally, we've had some pretty big news. Obviously, Freddie Owens was executed last week. There were a lot of people that were upset about that. I certainly wasn't one of them. Again, I've talked about my feelings on execution. I vacillate back and forth, but he killed somebody in prison. But the interesting thing was that the person that originally identified him as being the killer in the crime that got him the death penalty recanted last week, who's also spending their life in prison and maybe on death row, and said that he couldn't meet his maker knowing that he improperly identified and was the cause of Freddie Owens being executed. So Governor McMaster did not agree to give clemency and hold the execution, even with that evidence. Um, it's interesting. I was talking to Liz Farrell, my co-host of Cup of Justice, and she came up with a pretty good theory on the death penalty. She said it should be up to the victim and the victim's family. If the victim's family wants the death penalty, then it should be done. But if the victim's family does not want the death penalty, then it shouldn't be done. In fact, there was an execution, I think, in the West earlier this week, and the victim's family was adamant that they did not want the death penalty, but the state did go forward and executed the person. And that just goes to show you that the victim in a crime against the state is not the victim itself. The state becomes the victim. And that's why you always see it's the state of South Carolina versus so and so, because the state is the victim of a crime similar to the victim themselves being the victim of a crime. South Carolina, my understanding is they're going to execute 4 more people each succeeding month, beginning in October, November, December, and January. Now that the issue of chemical execution through the poison is now settled. And they're not going to name the companies that provide these toxic chemicals that will kill. So that is something that happened in our state. The other thing that came this week, there was 2 more major things. One that was really good. Governor McMaster appointed a 30-panel commission that will have 30-member panel commission that will have 30 members who will advise and give an update on our lakes, our streams, and our rivers in South Carolina. We have huge lakes in our state. In addition to the oceans, we have, Lake Moultrie, we have Lake Woodard, we have Lake Murray, we have Lake Hartwell, we have Clarks Hill, we have Lake Wiley that goes into Lake Norman in North Carolina. This is so beautiful. The part of our state, which people come here for, is to live on the lakes. I live on Lake Murray. And Governor McMaster wants to find out what is going on with the quality of the water, the watersheds. If there's too much pollutants, what can be done to preserve the beauty of our lakes, streams, and rivers? And I think that is magical. I applaud Governor McMaster for this. He represents to me what it means to be a conservative, and that means to conserve the beauty of our country. So I applaud Governor McMaster for that. I also applaud Governor McMaster for separating and distancing himself from the Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson of North Carolina, who made those heinous statements on a pornographic website that he's a black Nazi and that we should go back to slavery and all kinds of vulgar statements. He's distanced himself from Mark Robinson, will not campaign on his behalf. Also, President Trump distanced himself. He's been in North Carolina twice and has not invited Mark Robinson, and I applaud him for that. And the National Governors Association said that they would no longer give any more money to the North Carolina governor's race, where Josh Stein, the Democratic candidate who's the attorney general there, is up on that race. So I think that is a smart decision, and I applaud the Republicans for doing that. Hey, Becky Cover, good to see you. Thanks for jumping in. The next thing is we had an incredibly large civil jury verdict this week in Aiken. A lot of people that we all know were involved in that on the lawyer's end. Debbie Barbieri, who represents Russell Laffitte, and we'll talk about the Russell Laffitte matter in a minute. She represented some renters of a house in Aiken. It was a cottage house, and this wealthy couple who comes from lineage of wealthy people, senators or House members and different business tycoons, had a house that they rented early on, and then it went into Airbnb, where they had videos all over the house, including the bathroom, and they would videotape people who rented the house, often in sexually compromising positions or when they were naked in the bathroom. And they had over 20,000 videos. And Debbie Barbieri and Ryan Beasley, who's a friend of mine, who's actually a nephew of our former governor Beasley, They tried the case. And lo and behold, on the other side of the case, representing the peepers, scumbags, people who would do that are nothing but low scum, pond scum, was Jim Griffin, um, Joe McCullough, and my friend Maggie Fox. And they got tuned. And when I tell you tuned up, they got tuned on an actual damage verdict. The people who rented this house in 2001 and never even knew about it until Jim Griffin and Joe McCullough's clients were charged criminally. That they were videoed in part of this 20,000 tapes. Um, they sued for invasion of privacy, outrage, which is conduct unbecoming people who live in a civilized society that becomes intolerable. Certainly, this is intolerable conduct. And they got hit with a $27 million actual damages award. And then yesterday, the jury in the separate damages hearing awarded $10 more million or $8 million more of punitive damages. And then the judge added $10 million to that. So the total verdict was $45 million against Jim Griffin and Joe McCullough's clients. And my understanding is they're very wealthy people. Not sure they have the ability to answer for that type of judgment, but they have a lot of property, and I suspect that they're going to lose a lot of money. Usually, insurance wouldn't cover something like that. So, good for Debbie Barbier. Good for people who are willing to stand up. And I'm sure the videos were shown to the jury outside the presence of the public. Becky Cover says Jim and Joe need to pick better clients. I mean, sometimes, yes, I'm sure they were paid a lot of money, but you know, do you want to represent a peeper? I don't know. That's a decision they have to make. I'm not going to fault them for it. I'm not sure I would have done it, but I don't want to be critical of that. Everybody's entitled to representation, and they decide to go to trial. Seems like it was a foolish decision, unless they're going to declare bankruptcy, which I don't think they're going to be able to get this discharge because it was intentional conduct. Somebody should have made some kind of reasonable settlement offers because it would be, forecasted that a jury and probable would light them up like they did. So that's the other thing. On this week, we also had Russell Laffitte. His attorneys argued before the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. His appeal from the conviction in November of 2022 of his criminal case that was presided over by Judge Gergel. And you remember during that conviction, Judge Gergel discharged two of the jurors, and he did it outside the presence of Russell Laffitte and his attorneys. The issue that went up on appeal was it was a violation of his Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights for Judge Gergel not to have Russell Laffitte present when he discharged the jurors. The issue was that they agreed that Judge Gergel could question these jurors back in his chambers. But Judge Gergel never said that I'm going to question them. And then based on those questions, I may release them outside your presence. And so that was the issue. And I heard it was a pretty robust argument where the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals was receptive in a way to some of the arguments made by Russell Laffitte's lawyer. Emily Limehouse argued on behalf of the government, and another prosecutor argued as well. So we'll have to wait and see what will happen. If they have a high regard for Judge Gergel, they may find that it was a harmless error and affirm the conviction, or they may hold that his constitutional rights were violated. If they do, I'm sure the government will retry Russell Laffitte. Alex Murdaugh's briefs are due on his appeal, and they've consolidated the appeal so that the issue of Justice Toll's decision on the motion for a new trial based on juror interference, along with all the evidentiary issues that Judge Newman ruled on, like the admission of the financial crimes in the murder trial, as well as his decision not to change venue from Walterboro to another venue because Alex couldn't get a fair trial, is all going to be heard at once. Hey, Morgan Sanders Lowe, thanks for jumping in. Finally, we want to talk about Corey Fleming because nobody's talked about Corey Fleming in a long, long time. Corey has been serving almost a 46-month sentence in federal court. federal prison, excuse me, based on his federal plea. But don't forget, he got an additional almost 9 years by Judge Newman, so that when he gets out of federal prison, he will have to go and serve his time in state court. Well, he will be appealing what he considers to be a punitive and unnecessarily long decision by Judge Newman, but he can't do it until the restitution that he has to pay based on his theft attributed to the Gloria Satterfield $4.3 million is dealt with. So that's a pretty interesting situation that is going to come up. Now I'm going to start kind of getting in a rant. I really do apologize, but I'm really getting disgusted. Obviously, Mayor Adams being indicted is a disgusting thing, but I'm starting to hear some really, really disgusting things from people who are in office or running for office. And it's not only Donald Trump, okay? I will talk about him later, but it's people that are elected in the House of Representatives, people who are running for the Senate in Ohio, against Sherrod Brown. The Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno actually said that abortion is only an issue for people under 50 years old, women, meaning only for women under 50 years old, because the people under 50 years old are the ones who are having babies, and that women who are over 50 years old really don't have a vested interest in abortion and they don't care about it. Well, I beg to differ, okay? My wife, my lovely wife, Renee, is 59 years old, on her way to being 60 years old. She can't have children anymore. I certainly can't have children anymore. We've made certain decisions and taken certain medical procedures that we can't have children anymore. But if you want to say to my wife, she doesn't have a vested interest or an opinion in abortion, she will bite your head off. And everybody should, because everybody in our country has a right to talk about abortion, whether you're for it or you're against it. And how dare any politician say that there's an age limit when you shouldn't care about abortion anymore. The second thing is that Republican Chip Higgins from Louisiana said one of the most disgusting things yesterday on a tweet. He posted it, he deleted it, he reposted it, and deleted. He said that Haiti is one of the nastiest countries in the Western Hemisphere. And obviously, we're talking about Haitians because of all the the false allegations that they eat dogs and cats and that they're overrunning every one of our cities, even though they're here legally. He said the following: the Haitian people are thugs and they better get their ass out of our country by January 20th of 25, because if they don't, and Trump gets elected, um, he will deport these people. Now, Trump also said that he will deport these people. He said that I am going to deport not only illegals, but I will deport legally in people that are here legally that are immigrants. Now, that to me is so far over the top that people who have a vested interest that were approved by the State Department to come here legally, that they would uh, deport them. J.D. Vance on the trail this week said that he agrees with that we should start deporting legal immigrants. One thing to deport illegal immigrants, but a completely different kettle of fish. I think it's a disgusting thing that some House member would say that. The Haitian community is being singled out right now. There's now bomb threats and assassination threats going on throughout Springfield, Ohio, is trying to assassinate and threaten assassination of the mayor. Again, the governor and the mayor have begged Trump and Vance to stop with this rhetoric about Haitians. Even the residents of Springfield, Ohio, say that the Haitians are law-abiding citizens that are providing valuable and needed employment services. That's what they were brought over here for. Trump says that he's going to go to Springfield and Aurora, Colorado over the next 2 weeks. The mayors of both cities have begged him, please don't come. It will create unrest. It'll create more of a target on the backs of the Haitians. It was interesting because Trump's been trumpeting, bad word, Trump's been proclaiming how dangerous Aurora, Colorado is because there's supposedly this Venezuelan gang that has taken over the whole city. It is true that there are some bad Venezuelan gang members who have taken over an old apartment house. However, the mayor of Colorado said over the past 3 years, there's only been 12 arrests of these Venezuelan uh, gang members, not just Venezuelan peoples, but Venezuelan gang members. So he said, we don't have a problem. Again, I think we should slow this train down. We should slow the rhetoric down, slow what we say, be careful and be thoughtful about what we say. Obviously, in this week's news, we have a little bit of the RFK and the Newsio um, journalist from the New Yorker. Clearly, there was some inappropriate banner. I'm told that Cheryl Hines was at the fashion festival in Milan, Italy, and she was there without a ring. Um, RFK's a wacko. I mean, that's what you're going to get when you get the Kennedys. On the one hand, you may get some brilliant um, political beliefs, depending if you follow them or not. But on the other hand, these people believe that the law or the world's morals don't apply to them. Many of the Kennedy men have been womenizers, something that I don't think they should be proud of. And certainly RFK, who brags about being a womanizer, kept a journal about it, says that he has a lust gene. And then in his phone, under the slang term for an Italian who has a mistress, a guma, he had under G 36 different women and identified them as the Guma teacher or the Guma West Palm Beach person. Seems like the guy had a woman in every nook and cranny. Patty, I'm going to talk. Patty Dasher, a really good friend of mine. I will talk about uh, the hurricane that will be coming through, and I do pray for her. Um, so RFK doesn't get any sympathy from me, which leads me into P. Diddy. I think the P. Diddy, Sean Puffy Combs, is going to blow the lid off of finally how many reprobates and miscreant politicians and Hollywood people and businessmen that we have in our country. People that are absolute freaks. Okay. Maybe they're married, but they don't care. Maybe they're bisexual, which is certainly their choice, but they are abusing women. They are sex trafficking women. And if you think, well, just because somebody may be an escort, oh, no, no, no. That doesn't give you the right to drug somebody and videotape them and then blackmail them with videotapes or put ecstasy or other type of drugs, GHB, the date rape drug, in baby oil. That's another allegation that came out now that Sean Puffy would have GHB and baby oil and they'd rub it on the people and it would, make them to the point that they were not able to exhibit their free will. The sad part is that we're starting to hear really, really bad things. Justin Bieber is coming out and saying part of his problems that he suffered as a teenager and a young adult and his erratic behavior and some of the things he said was a result of being under the tutelage of Puff Combs. Same with Usher. They took advantage of these young kids, and Bieber starts to cry when he talks about his time with Puffy Combs. And just because these people become business moguls, Jay-Z, Puffy Combs, and Kanye West, it doesn't make them moral. They become more immoral because they don't think the rules apply to them. And it's a disgrace. And I think it's going to come out some of the horrible things that they've done, especially to the Porter lady who is mother to some of the children that Puffy Combs had and the circumstances surrounding her death. I think it's going to really come full circle, especially with RFK. I mean, his second wife committed suicide. No wonder she would have felt of no worth the way that RFK treats them. All these people treat women as objects instead of equal, instead of with respect, instead of with dignity. It's disgraceful. And I hope Sean Puffy Combs gets 1,000 years if he's guilty of this stuff. And I think people like Bill Gates, who was a big Epstein guy, all these people that the world thinks are such great guys, they're sick. Okay. I don't know what made them sexual deviants. I don't know whether it's power, money, whatever, beat as a child, but I don't know these people. I mean, I don't have them in my life. I don't know where they exist, but we got to stop glorifying them, beautifying them, thinking that they're great people. They're scum. Okay. Sorry for me doing that. The next thing is I read about in Switzerland, they came up with this suicide pod. It's the neatest thing. It looks like a time capsule or an oxygen chamber that you would get in to get oxygen, and you press a button, and nitrogen comes out, and it puts you to sleep over a 10-minute period. And Switzerland, you can have assisted suicide, but it's got to be documented through doctors. And if even when you're doing the nitrogen, if you decide you want to stop it, it's got a stop button on it. So it's a pretty neat thing. Look it up. Um, but the people who assisted in doing it got arrested because it's not an approved treatment method of assisted suicide. The Israel Hezbollah situation is taking on a life of their own. We'll put aside the Israel Hamas war that's going on, but the Israel Hezbollah situation is much different. Remember, Israel's going into Hamas. Hamas is shooting rockets at Israel from Palestine. The Palestinians say it's an occupied country, that Israel is occupying their country. Hezbollah is a terror group that are backed by Iran, that are housed in Lebanon. And Israel is getting rockets, tons of rockets, big rockets, not the little rockets that Hamas. These are Iranian-backed long-range missiles. In fact, one of the missiles went to Tel Aviv this week, which was the first time that a missile from Lebanon went to Tel Aviv. It was knocked out by Israel's Iron Dome. Israel now is going to go in and bring in ground troops, and I think that's going to be the all-out Middle East war. So I'm very nervous about that. Next, we're going to talk about the assassination case. Certainly, Secret Service let down former President Donald Trump, certainly put fear in his wife, Melania. She talked about what it's like to see her husband uh, get shot at on TV, and then another assassination attempt right near their home in Mar-a-Lago. The Secret Service people resigned this week. They did not provide the kind of security that former President Trump deserves. I disagree with him 180% on his political beliefs, but I do not believe that anybody running for office should have their life at stake. And what the Secret Service did was disgraceful. And it's interesting. The person who's charged with the assassination attempt on President Trump down in Florida got assigned to Eileen Cannon. And Eileen Cannon is the judge who dismissed the confidential documents case against President Trump. So there's going to be a move by the prosecutors and the defense attorneys, more appropriately, to get her kicked off the case, because she's under appeal right now to the 11th Circuit for the favorable things that she showed to former President Trump in her rulings. But the interesting fact is that the would-be assassin's son was just arrested for child pornography. He had over 20,000 pictures of 6-year-olds getting abused. What sick bastard is somebody like that? How is it possible that these people are driving cars around us, cooking our food, teaching our children, taking care of us in a store, providing care to our dogs and animals? Where are these sick people? And where are the people who are around these sick people who know that they're sick? Again, we are our brother's keeper. I'm just sick of what's happening. Crime is going down. It is unquestionably going down. Violent crime and the number of murders is going down. What is going up? the lack of morality in our country, the things of pornography, crimes, pornographic, um, sexual trafficking have quadrupled in the past 8 years, which is a violent crime. So whether violent crimes going down under the blue collar street robbery, burglary, drug crimes, it's going up for pornography. So we need to do something about that. Um, the next thing is the Dow Jones hit 42,000 points this week. So 42,000 level this week, which is an all-time high. Interest rates are at its lowest point since 2020. The Fed lowered interest rates half a point. So I think that's going to be excellent for our economy. Now we're seeing Trump and Harris battle on their economic plans. Trump's plan, by the way, just so everybody knows, is to increase tariffs 200% across the board. Every single economist on Wall Street, Wharton School of Business, Stanford, you name it, said across the board tariffs are the worst thing that could happen to our country. It will raise the price and soak the middle class and the those that struggle to make ends meet to have to pay for more goods. Targeted tariffs are good. A couple of years ago, we had the Chinese infiltrate our country with substandard steel and they lowered the products. We targeted and tariffed their steel. Individually targeted tariffs are great. Across the board are bad. Countries that use child labor and they don't pay their workers a lot of money, therefore their goods are coming in cheap. Target those goods. But across the board tariffs are not good. So that is a problem. Came out this week that Brett Favre has Parkinson's disease. That's very sad. It's another continuation of the CTE in football, the brain injuries from those that have concussions. We talked last week about Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback for Miami, has suffered 5 concussions. Brett Favre says that he thinks he's suffered 100 concussions in his career. He's suffering from dementia. There's certain athletes. I just saw Tommy Kramer, a former quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. He now has dementia at 69 years old. This is a real serious problem that we have. Football is so enjoyable to watch on a college level and professional level, but I believe that high school students, we should not have tackle football in high school and junior high. It should be flag football. These brain injuries are coming in droves. It's real. It's documented. And the sad part is you can't find out if you have CTE until you die, and then they take your brain out. So that's really something that uh, should concern everybody that's interested in football and watches it, that every time you see somebody wobble off the field, it's a high likelihood that they suffered a significant concussion. The interesting thing is we're starting to see some NIL backlash. UNLV is 3-0, University of Northern Las Vegas. Their quarterback came from Holy Cross, starting 4-year quarterback, came to UNLV, went in the transfer portal, and they promised him $100,000 from the NIL collective. He hasn't gotten his money. And then he was told, and this was promised to him by the assistant coach that recruited him. He was told this week he's not going to get the money. Well, guess what he did? I'm done. He resigned from the UNLV football program, and he's going to put his name back in the portal and go play for somebody else. Evidently, you can play up to 3 games and then sit out and still qualify for another year. They also lost another player this year. And I think you're going to start seeing this where promises are made by either boosters or athletic club members or coaches, and they don't pan out on how much money these college football players are getting. And the college football players are going to say, I'm not going to play for you. This is a quarterback that walked away from a team that's 3-0, about to be nationally ranked. Don't know if I agree with that because he's supposed to be a leader for his teammates. It's not fair to the teammates, but this is the problems that we're starting to see with NIL. So that is a big problem. President Trump is now selling coins. Former President Trump, along with his trading cards, his sneakers, Bibles that are signed, pieces of his suits for when he had his mugshot, and pieces of his suits for when he suffered his assassination attempts. I think it's disgraceful. It's just hawking goods. It really cheapens what we're doing. So I will move on now to our questions from listeners. Patty Dashel wants us to pray for her hometown, Valdosta, Georgia, which is in the path of Hurricane Helena. It's very sad. Patty is a wonderful, wonderful person, very generous. She does the decoupage. If you guys ever go on Facebook, go look. She does some amazing decoupage. She said that they had a major hurricane come through Valdosta, Georgia, a year before that caused major damage, and this one is supposed to be worse. How bad is it for homeowners to go every single year to deal with hurricane and property damage? So my heart's out for Patty. We're going to pray for her, and I ask that all of you do that as well. Kim asks, how do you report to someone to the South Carolina bar? She said that her attorney has been horrible and done nothing on her case. She hired him almost a year ago to take on. All you have to do is go to the Supreme Court website, and it'll provide you with information on how to make a bar complaint. I will tell you that what you write will be sent to the attorney, but not necessarily quickly. You'll get an update that may say that they're looking at the file or they've opened an investigation, and they may not tell you exactly what they've done, whether it's a private letter of caution or they dismissed it. You'll get a letter that says only the matter's been resolved. I think that's not right. I don't think you're part of the process that you should be, but that is what you can do. You obviously can consult with a lawyer like me or someone else that does legal malpractice and have a discussion with a lawyer to see if there's liability that goes with a significant amount of damages. Sometimes there's rule violations of the rules of professional conduct. This seems like this is a lack of competency and a lack of communication, but that's what you can do, Kim. Go to the website. Casey Odell, my friend, said, do you find it strange that SLED hasn't gotten any further on the Stephen Smith investigation or on the various investigations like the roadside shooting, but they found time to go around multiple local bars in Columbia asking for proof of insurance? Could it be at the request of a former senator for that district? I do agree, and that senator would be Dick Harpootlian. She's a skeptic. I'm a skeptic. I'm very disappointed, and I said this on this week's episode of Cup of Justice, extremely disappointed in SLED and the pace of this investigation. You can't tell me it takes a year and a half since they said that in March of 2023 that Stephen died by a homicide, that they're not going to have answers. Answers, whether the answer is we can't find anything and there's nothing more, or we do know what happened and they start arresting people. But to leave it linger on forever is not fair to Sandy Smith, especially when they opened this investigation, believe it or not, in July of 2021, 1 month after Maggie and Paul were killed, because they supposedly found something during the investigation on the property at Mizell that indicated that they should reopen the investigation of Stephen Smith. So I am extremely disappointed, as are Mandy and Liz and Sandy Smith, at the pace of what SLED is doing. And I am saying that now publicly. Catherine asked, what's my take on the new Ukrainian drone bombs? Are they game changers against Russia? Oh, yes, they are. She said, similar to Israeli exploding pagers and walkie-talkies and different things like that. They definitely are a game changer. I think Russia is not used to having its own sovereign land attacked, especially Ukraine, who's taken over some of the land in a northern city that's close to its border. So I think it is a game changer. Obviously, President Trump is not committed to Ukraine winning the war. He said that if he wins the election, he'll be able to settle it within 24 hours. I find that hard to believe, but of course, he makes so many different promises, and he can cure anything, including cancer and whatever ails you. So those are the questions. Let me say hello to Becky Cover. Morgan Sanders says, EB, you're on fire. Yes, I am. Casey Odell says hello. Thank you, Linda Limerick, for coming to the show. Becky Cover, hello. Sue Johnson says, has your opinion on Tim Walz changed at all? I don't like him. I'm not saying he's not a nice guy. I just don't think it was the right pick for Kamala Harris. I think the debate's going to be interesting. I think he's going to have to answer some hard questions during that debate. He's more liberal than I like. I will support Kamala, but I do not like Tim Walz, and nothing I've seen so far has changed it. I don't like him as a candidate. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a great person, and he's a good governor for Minnesota, but he's not a good president for 50 states. He's good for Minnesota, but not good for us. That's just how I feel. Michelle Kutner says they've been doing this in Hollywood for 70 years. She's 100%. The famous let me interview you on the couch. So that's what we have. Really excited about tomorrow night at 7:00. It's our 100th episode on Cup of Justice. So Mandy, Liz, and I will be going live with premium members, answering questions, and having a really good chat. Just extremely humbled that we're on our 100th episode. If you would ask me when I started, I would have said, no way we could sustain it. No way we could sustain it when the Murdaugh matter died down. But, it's sustained because of listeners. It's sustained because of people who want justice and people who want to see our country in a better place. So I want everybody to batten down the hatches, hold your loved ones, shore up your windows, and stay dry. Patty, I'm going to be thinking about you and anybody who's in the path of Hurricane Helene. So with that said, EB out.